Man, you're like a quotable machine today. First of all, when you said leadership is not taught, it's caught. I love that.
Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves.
Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Scott Groves here with the On the Edge podcast, and I'm here with a really old friend of mine that unfortunately I don't get to see in person enough. So if you know anybody looking to sponsor an awesome leadership coach so she can get here to America because she's getting sick of Canada, I think just like most Canadians are, but maybe now we're going to get censored for saying that. But I'm here. Whoa. Well, see, more proof that we film in my garage. My alarm for my normal office meeting is going off. But I'm here with my friend Asmaa, and I don't know how to say enough good things about you. I mean, we met at a facilitation and leadership exchange group, used to be called LEAF. Now it's called Exchange. Shout out to John Berghoff and all the cool things that they're doing. We really met at a coaching group for coaches, like learning how to be better facilitators, learning how to do better stuff. And I've gone on to do boring stuff, which is coach loan officers. And here you are going to the UN to speak on leadership of women's rights and like all this cool shit that you've accomplished since we met, I don't know, like almost a decade ago, it feels like. So first of all, catch us up what's new with you. We're going to put your website in the links to all the things because you have a beautiful website with all of your coaching offerings and all the strategic leadership you do. And then what's really crazy to me is since you started in marketing, even though you're doing this women in leadership stuff and you're super fancy now, you're going to the UN, you still have a foot in like, you know, global business consulting and marketing for people that want to build big brands. So give us the update on all of the crazy stuff that's going on in your life.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Scott. So nice to see you. Oh my God. Yes, it's been a decade ago. Totally feels like it. Wow. Well, I've definitely been very busy. I think the main thing that was happening with me, like I was really trying to create this place where how you can be like a multi-passionate, like founder, entrepreneur, and like still bring everything that you're really good at and also the things that you're passionate about into a package that just excites you every day, right? Like you're just excited to get out of bed. And so I love marketing. I love branding. I love like helping brands to be seen all around the world and really like connect to what the heart of what they are doing matters and how you can really bring that. Because at the end of the day, business is people working with other people, right? It's not about pushing for things. And as you can see now, a lot of people are biased now with ads and with like spam and everything. So how can you like really create that emotional connection? We did also like facilitation training of how we can bring this appreciative lens into everything that we are doing and how we can create this sense of belonging and psychological safety in groups, right? And at the same time, like what I've realized, like while like doing a lot of marketing and starting like to do like some mentorship for a lot of women, especially women immigrants here in Canada, I just realized how their leadership level was so lower to a lot of other North American women that I knew. And so that gap really started me. And I was like, okay, what can we do in order to get them at the same playing field as others? And so that's when I started like creating my leadership program. And for me, like at the end of the day, business is an inner game, you know? And so it's all about your own self-leadership with yourself. So how can you lead a business if you cannot lead yourself? And so like really just bridging that leadership with business and with how you can market yourself in a more authentic way. And that's like what brings it like full circle.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that business is an inner game. I love that quote. We're going to make a little infograph or a little screenshot of that for Instagram, that business is an inner game, sorry. Because I was just talking to a group of entrepreneurs the other night in this Telegram thread that we have. There's a bunch of like commission only people and business owners. And we were just talking about the stress of the current market and inflation and all that stuff. And until you've been the person that signs the payroll checks, like you don't really understand the stress of owning a business and all of the self-doubt that creeps into your head and all the second guessing. And like, you know, when your name is on the checks for the payroll, that's when shit gets real. And I don't feel like a lot of non-business owners understand that. So could we pull on that thread a little bit? And can you talk about this idea of like business is an inner game?
Yeah, no, totally. Well, you know, and it's what's the interesting thing about that concept is it's at all the layers, right? Like I start with like people that's just like, I hate my job. I just want to be my own boss, but I'm scared and I don't think I can do it. And I'll be like, how long have you been thinking about this? Be like, oh, it's for the 3, 4, 5 years. So you haven't taken any action. No. Why? Right. And most of the time it's fear or for the wrong reasons, like any reasons to just stop them to procrastinate because they're scared to be successful, maybe, right? And then you talk to leaders or people that already have a business, but they cannot hit a certain threshold. Like they just get stuck at a certain level. And then again, that same thing, it's an inner game. Like it's more like a mindset thing, right? So maybe it starts with people at the beginning. It's still a mindset thing because they need to get out of their own fears. They need to get from their own self-sabotage. And then you get to this level now, oh, okay, like it's about strategy. It's like, yeah, but strategy is 20%, but 80% is what's happening between your ears, right? It's all like the self-talk, the self-doubt that you have with yourself. And then when you talk to high level like CEOs and leaders, they have the money, they have the expertise, they have the experience, they prove themselves, but then you can see like in their personal relationship, like it's not going really well, right? And that's like, again, that's the emotional intelligence. That's like how you can act, how you can show your emotion, how you can be like a leader, like in home, like how you can be also with your team. And so at the end of the day, it's like how you as a person show up. And so for me, like my philosophy is always like, I need to get to know the leader, grow the business. And so it starts with you at any level, whether you're just starting out or you're already the top incredible, amazing CEO with a lot of achievements. It all starts with you as a leader. And so there's this element of self-leadership for me that is so key and that's so important. And when I have like people working with me, like we spend like the first sessions, like almost 4 to 5 sessions, just working in them getting to know themselves. And it's so surprising how many people don't know themselves because they are just stuck with this story or their limited belief or their preconditioning that they had their whole life that just tells them this is who they are supposed to be. And they're just afraid to even know who they want to be. And most of the time, what I also find it interesting, which I started even reframing my questions into like what you don't want to be, because people mostly know what they don't want versus what they want.
Oh, 100%,
right? And so now I do this exercise of the anti-vision. Like let's start with an anti-vision with everything you don't want, right? And then after that, let's turn it into something that fires you up and that excites you. And so at the end of the day, it is an inner game. And so when I work with people and they come to me, it's like, oh, Asmaa, I'm not getting enough leads, or like my lead magnet is not working and things like that. I was like, okay, I can still give you the strategy or the tactic for it. But what I want to grow your capacity to be able to handle that through your own leadership. Right? Because your problem just going to grow with time, like exactly what you said. You're starting out with just you in your garage, but then at some point you'll need to put your name in the paycheck and you need to be putting that payroll. And so that, like, again, it just increases the level of stress and things. And so like how you can on yourself increase that in capacity for you able to handle that and still be authentic all the way around, you know?
Man, anybody who's having problems in their business should go back and listen to that 3-minute rant that you just gave, because I heard so much stuff in there. The first thing I heard was grow the leader, grow the business. And I'm going to come back to that. The next thing I heard was grow your personal capacity. I love that. And then, when we talk about these stories in our head, I know the story that I'm telling myself. The story I tell myself is I'm not a good leader or good manager of high performing individuals. Like I'm really good with the team members who need to check the boxes and do the things and whatnot, or at least I'm getting better at that. But I have like this story that I tell myself and this self-doubt around, man, when I get a really high producer that wants to grow, I'm not good at setting that vision, and they're going to have about a 2 to 3 year shelf life with me. So like the books that I'm reading right now, because I'm sick of like starting over with new junior partners every 2 or 3 years, is like, I got to stop telling myself the story that I'm bad at this. I'm just not good at it yet. And I've got to get some training to get better at it, right? Because like we all have these super fucked up stories we tell ourselves in business, right? Oh, I can't go from operations to sales because I'm not a good salesperson. Or, oh, I can't hire good people because, what am I going to do if they're better than me? And I don't know if I can invest in my business in this way because like, who am I to think that I can grow a business this big? Like we all have these crazy stories we tell ourselves. And I'm just thinking of like, how many $1 million businesses haven't been created because of fear and because of these stories that we're telling ourselves?
99%. Like fear kills more dreams than anything else. Like it's just people just don't go take action. But like, see, like for me, what's interesting about imposter syndrome and those negative self-talk is that the idea here is to be able to dissociate ourselves from it, because we think we are it. We think that I am a really bad manager. I don't think I can hire people smarter than me. They can see that I am a fraud. I cannot do this. Who am I to be like a multimillionaire? Who am I like to do this? Like they're gonna, as soon as I'm gonna go and speak at the UN or go and speak at it, they're gonna know I'm a fraud because I don't have a PhD or something, right? But what is interesting is like when we start talking about positive intelligence, right? And then with positive intelligence, you're able to identify your saboteurs. And so the way with like it's done with more like positive intelligence, like you have 10 different type of saboteurs, and you just need to understand which one are running you right now. Because the way it starts when at an early age, like we had to create this different saboteurs that were our allies when we were younger, right? Because when you see your parents fighting, like you cannot just like up and go, like you're
Right.
5 years old or you're 6 years old. So you will need to have like this judge saboteur that will come into your life and they'll be like, it's because of you, because you're not worthy. That's why like they're fighting. It's like, and so like it's a way for you to be like, oh, it's because of me, and then like that I have to stay, and then that judge or that saboteur, or I have to be perfect in order for me to be loved by my dad or by my mom. I have to get higher grades in order for me to earn that love. And then you start to have those stories about yourself. But what's interesting is that when you start working with a coach, or we start doing the own like self-awareness work, which sometimes it's hard because you can see it until a certain level, but you cannot see your own nose. That's why you need a coach. That's why you need someone else that can like help you mirror back to you either your greatness or also your shortcomings and patterns, because you cannot see them until they happen for years and years to come. And so when that happens, then you're like, oh, okay. Oh, this is my judge talking. Oh, this is my perfectionism talking. Oh, this is my victim saboteur talking. And then you start like to layer them differently. And so at that moment, you start to take your power back, and then you become more empowered in that moment, because you're like, oh, that was just a saboteur that really helped me when I was younger, but now I don't have to listen to it anymore. Right. And so when you start to dissociating yourself from your self-talk, that is not you. And that's what we say most of the time. Just let your thought just go as clouds, like, and don't define yourself with them, because most of the time it's not you. It's a story. It's a belief. It's somebody told you something when you were younger and it just registered somewhere in your body or in your unconscious. Right. And so those are the things that I see like happening over and over again. And it will like with leaders, and even like whether they are successful or they are struggling, it's always like them defining themselves as their own saboteurs. Like exactly what you said, I am not good enough, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. But like turning it back into who is talking right now, right? Like me right now, I have my saboteurs and I give them names, right? So I have names for each one. So I'll be like, hey,
I've got way more than 10. I don't know if I can remember that many names.
But you will know who are your top three that are like hurting you the most, right?
Right. So what
Like
is Tina? What does Tina do to you? You named your saboteur Tina. How does Tina try to sabotage you?
So I have Tiffany, Tina, and Tamil. So Tamil is the judge. And it's so interesting. When I was doing a visualization, it shows up like this very old lady woman, like living in the mountains of Morocco. And she's against women to be empowered. Women are supposed to be in the kitchen and should be cooking and should have kids and should never like put their eyes up looking at a man. And like, and I never met this time. I don't know who she is, but that's the judge that shows up. And so most of the time we're like, oh my God, like you're over 40, you're not even married, you don't even have kids. Like, I'm like, whoa, Tamush, we're not talking, like you don't have a voice here, right?
Yeah.
And then I have Tina. Tina is the victim, right? Because I lived like in a country or in a system that like, oh, like women, you have to be a victim and men are the powerful men and stuff. And so as soon as like the little victims start showing up, oh, why me, or why this happened again or again, it's like, oh, Tina, it's okay. That's business. That's life. We're going to keep going. We're not going to still mellowing down on this, right?
Yeah.
And then I have Tiffany. And Tiffany, she's the perfectionist, where everything needs to be perfect, needs to be pretty, and things like that. I'll be working like on a freebie for like 6 or 7 hours, and I'll be like, no, I think after 2 or 3 hours, I think we're good. Like we can launch this, right? And so starting to naming them like helps me have more self-compassion towards myself as a leader. and also show up in all of my colors, right? They are still part of me. They are still me, right? And so that's what makes me unique, and that's what makes me different. And so with my clients, we start to identify these saboteurs and give them a name. And then when they start talking to me, I'll be like, ooh, Patrick just showed up. Ooh, Diana just showed up, right? And then they're like, what? Like, because it's so ingrained that you don't even realize when you are having that doubt and that self-talk that it's like one of your saboteurs taking over, right? And it's just about awareness. It's just about recognizing. That's why I said it's an inner game, because it's still like a game that you're playing either with yourself, with your saboteurs, with your stories, with your culture, like all the belief that happens to you. And then you start to get all these new different situations happening to you and how you can like get out of them, but still be authentically you and who you truly are. Because for me, like with all of this, everybody has this incredible potential of leadership and for creating a beautiful life for themselves. And it could be anything. It could be like, I just want to live in the mountains for the rest of my life and do whatever, or I want to be a multimillionaire and like have a CEO and have a big job. At the end of the day, it's all about having this beautiful harmony within yourself where you are authentically you and you're not letting anything running you down that is not meant for you.
So I'm going to have Chris clip this 5-minute segment that ends with me giving you this idea. I just named one of my saboteurs. He's Mark the Market, because, you know, when you work in finance, it's really easy to get in this victim mentality of like, oh, the market's working against me. Why are property values so high? Why are interest rates so high? Why doesn't this like realtor use me anymore? Oh, why can't I get this client to call me back? Oh, the market is so shitty. The market is tough. The market is this. It's very easy to go on CNBC right now or MSNBC or whatnot and find somebody talking poorly about the real estate market, right? Oh, it's so expensive. Affordability is never. Okay, well, I have two options. I can either change jobs, right, and find another source of income and then go find another saboteur to piss me off. Or I can just accept like, oh no, this is Mark the Market, and Mark is like talking shit to me about why I'm not going to be successful, and he's giving me excuses and he's giving me all kinds of like negative feedback, when the reality is, yeah, there's not going to be 5 million homes sold in America. There's only going to be 4 million homes sold in America. But how many of those homes do I need to actually have a really good living as a loan officer or realtor, right? So I just named Mark the Market. And then I just named Paul the Procrastinator, because Paul is deep in my brain. Like, oh, I can watch a YouTube video. Oh, I work from home. Right outside of the back of my sliding glass doors is the pool. I should go for a swim. I should be in better shape. Like, and I just keep procrastinating on some of the stuff that I know I have to do. And then it's the end of the day and I want to take the kids to jiu-jitsu and I'm like, okay, I got half an hour to get all the important stuff done. It's like, well, why did I do that at 8 a.m. instead of 4:30 p.m.? So I've got Mark the Market and Paul the Procrastinator. These are a couple of my saboteurs for sure. And we're going to send this out to all the realtors and lenders I know, because that's just a really great way to think about it. And then, you know, when I like give it a label like this, it's just so much easier to say, fuck you, Mark. I'm going to get back to work. No offense.
Here we go.
No offense, Mark Mintz, my friend Mark Mintz, who's a realtor. I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying generic Mark the Market. Fuck Mark. I'm getting back to work, and I'm not going to let that saboteur get in my head.
Here we go. You got it.
Oh man, I want to go back to something you said. You said grow the leader, grow the business. And for those that are watching the audio, they're like, what's wrong with Scott's mouth? I'm smoking a cigar while we're talking because I enjoy cigars, and this is the Padron 1926, which is my favorite cigar. So anyway, I in addition to being a loan officer and still doing that 40 hours a week, I for some reason want to have another 40-hour-a-week job where I coach loan officers. And when I get called by companies, this happens all the time. Maybe you can give me some coaching on how to fix this. I'll get called by a company, smaller company, you know, maybe they have like 10 local leaders, producing branch managers, regional managers. Underneath those 10 leaders, they've got another 80 or 90 loan officers, and then maybe they got 50 or 60 support staff. And they'll call me and they're like, hey, Scott, you know, we saw your book. We know you're still a working loan officer. We like that. We really need some sales training and some lead generation training, which is what I'm kind of known for. Can you come in and like do a webinar for our loan officers and then maybe do like a coaching engagement for the loan officers? And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I'm more than happy to help with that. I can give you some tactics, some strategies, some check the box items to increase sales and whatnot. But what you're probably really looking for is some leadership training, because there's probably some accountability, some structure, some commitment and some motivation. There's probably something, because the way that we choose leaders in the real estate world and the mortgage world is we take the top producer and we say, hey, top producer, you're going to have the corner office now. You're now in charge of this branch and you're going to get a small override on all the loan officers in the branch. Good job. Go be a leader. They get no leadership training. And so what I've tried to pitch companies many, many times is like, yes, and like we can definitely do the sales training, but we should probably do a little, 2-day event or some type of consortium of the leaders and kind of train the trainer. And there's an immediate pushback. Well, we don't want to offend them. And we've never really done some leadership training before. So like, how would we even roll that out? And there's a real pushback towards leadership training because they're like, well, we want the sales training. We need results right now. And it's like, okay, well, do you want to just like a couple loan officers succeed and they do the things I say? Or do you want to actually grow the leader, grow the business? I'm going to completely tagline that, grow the leader, grow the business, because like I cannot seem to get through to people in leadership on the finance side, whether it's insurance agencies who I get called sometimes, whether it's mortgage people, real estate people. I can't convince them to like grow the leader, grow the business. They're like, we just want sales, 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 sales. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Sales is the lifeblood of any organization. But if your leaders are mediocre, your salespeople are going to be mediocre. So how do I break through that limiting belief of the person that's trying to schedule training?
Yeah, that's very interesting what you said, because that's what I've struggled with. Like when I moved from my marketing agency that was making tons of money, and then I shifted into leadership thinking it's going to be 10x that. And during the years, what was interesting, like every time like somebody made me like, oh, wow, you're a business consultant, you're a marketer. Can I have your business card? Can I have your business card? And as soon as I start saying, hey, I'm a leadership, and I'm like, oh, great. Do you have a book you recommend? Right. And so the way they go about it is like leadership is secondary. Like it's not that important, but like having my marketing and having my sales is super important, right? Because it's tangible. And
Right.
so for me, for what I've learned with that is that it's just like choosing the language and then really reinforcing the education, right? Like as a consultant, that's what you need to do. You still need to educate people. And I'd be like, still, yeah, I can create you the most amazing website ever. But like, if you're like CRO, like is low, like your conversion rate optimization for each page is low, like I can still create you the best website, but I still will mean nothing. Right. And so it's just like a matter of like doing some education. And also like, it's like, when you do it with the kids, like you want to give them education inside of a candy. Mm-hmm. Like it's similar. So for me, for example, in my coaching, I talk about fire and flow in terms of also there's a lot of elements with fire and flow leadership, which is the methodology that I've created. And it has that element of like taking action, but also this element of surrendering and things. There is also this element of masculine energy. It's like, I'm going to like really like exude this masculine trait, but also like this feminine trait that I can exude as well, like et cetera, et cetera. But I don't talk about that until like the 4th or the 5th session. I never lead with that. But the moment I say that, the breakthroughs happen then. That session, everybody's blown away and they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know this. And I'm always like started. Like I could have started with that, but they're not ready. So They need that education. They need that thing. So what I started saying for me is like, I'll help you start. So when I start working with women, when I work with women, I say, let me help you start your dream business the feminine way. They all lean in. They're like, oh my God, I'm interested, right? This is what I want. I want to do it in my own rhythm, my own way, like not have like to hustle, call people and this, right? Because that just scares women. That's not what we want. We want connection. We want collaboration. We want like, to lead with that. And so I said, and then when I say that, they're like, yes, at the end of the day, what is it? Most of it is leadership. And then when I start reading cohorts and I'm like, okay, in 3 months, you're all going to start a business. What do you think I'm spending like 70% of my time during those cohorts? I'm fighting with my husband. I have no idea what to do. Oh my God, I was crying all night yesterday because I was not able to figure this thing out. I don't know how to deal with my kid. I don't know how to do this thing here. Like, I don't know like how to tell my parents about my dream business. Like, I'm having a hard time having good conversations with them. I don't know how to set my boundaries. I don't know how to stay motivated and productive with this. It's all again what's happening between your ears. It's never the strategy itself. It's never the tactic, because everybody can go find that online or on YouTube on and everything. It's always what's happening between your ears. And so for you, I'll say like, yeah, it's an education piece. And then for me, like I literally say it like upfront. I'm like, I don't work that way. So now when people comes to me and want to create a website, I'll be like, no, I need to coach you. You need to get into my leadership program, because I need to know you. I need to know your essence. I need to understand your vision. I need to understand how I can like position you for a unique selling proposition for yourself. And then from there, I need to take all of this information and convert it back into a technical language to my web team for them to go and build your website.
Right.
So if you want to create this leadership brand, so that's when I work with CEOs and stuff, that's what we do, like this leadership brand. I need to get to know you. So somebody coming like from the street, like, hey, Asmaa, create me a website. No, because I still need to do that work. But if you're not ready yourself to do that work, there's no point. You will still have maybe a sales, like for you, like it could be like a sales methodology or sales scripts, and I'll give you all the tactics, but then off you go. And then it will be like throwing spaghetti on the wall. Like it may work, it may not work. But then the foundation is what matters. And so you'll be like, you know what, the way I work, this is how it works. Yes, I'll do this and this and this, but I need to have this foundational training that needs to happen, where I'm just like getting the pulse of your team and trying to understand where they're at in terms of their leadership and where they're at with things. And I'm seeing this a lot also in organizations, and like they will rise, like exactly what you said, somebody that is top performing or working really well. Oh, here we go. Now you're a team lead.
Yeah.
Zero training. And then they're just thrown there and they're like, so all their self-sabotage they had now is 10x.
Oh yeah, for sure, right?
And they cannot perform anymore, because now they're not just focused on doing what they do best. Now, oh my God, now 90% of my time or 80% of my time, I need to teach people how I do it, but I also need to understand them and understand how they do it. And how can I be myself? And most of them, they're not authentically leading. They start to follow how their boss looks like or how they talk, and they have no idea where to go. And so what I see for a lot of people, unfortunately, is a lot of organizations don't even pay for that. So people will have to go and find coaches on their own. So I have few people that's like, I just became a team lead of 16 people and I have no idea. So can you please help me? Can you coach me for the next 6 months so I just can understand how I can authentically be myself and lead them in my own way? Right? And not like trying to follow what the organization is telling me. And of course, on the other side, you have the pressure of the organization. Where are the sales? Where are the this and where are that? But like, that's why I'm talking about like this needs to be this education piece that is important. So if they're coming to you and you've already proven yourself over and over again that you're really the go-to guy, you'll be like, yeah, this is my methodology. This is how I do it. I will give you this, but also this needs to be integrated and included.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe you'll call it something else, right? You call it like foundational sales principles, whatever that is, that it's really them humans, like how and what's stopping them from following up with people, what's stopping them from going after the big leads, what's stopping them, right? Just to understand their fears, their saboteurs, and also like for me, it's your zone of genius when you perform at your best, right?
So this is so funny. You're making me think of a leader. And Chris, you're going to have to make a note that when this podcast comes out, I got to send it to my boy, Hovik. One of my friends, Hovik, he's been a great leader in the mortgage space for 20 years, right? And Hovik, I'm sure you do a bunch of beautiful other things as a leader, and I'm sure you do a lot of amazing things. But the thing that sticks out to me for him is the simplest shit ever. Every single day, he pulls a report that sees what loan officers in his branch has pulled a credit report. Because so many leaders are coming to loan officers being like, how many loans did you fund this month? How many loans are you going to fund this month? It's like, well, that's the lagging indicator. The leading indicator is, all right, how many deals went under contract? How many of those deals went under contract were pre-approvals? How many of those pre-approvals did you have consultations? How many of those consultations were you allowed to pull the credit report for the client? So Hovik has this down to a science. He's like, dude, if you go 3 or 4 days without pulling a credit report, something is massively wrong in your mortgage business. And so when he starts to see that one of his loan officers hasn't pulled a credit report in a day, 2 days, 3 days, he's on the phone with him. Hey, how's it going? What's going on? Oh yeah, Hovik, man, I was on vacation this week. I wasn't really focused on the business, but I've got, 15 realtor calls and 10 clients who never converted into applications I'm going to get back to when I'm back on Monday. All right, cool. That makes sense. Asmaa, I cannot tell you the number of leaders that I have told, hey man, You want to make leadership in the mortgage business super easy? Pull the credit report every day. And if it's been more than 72 hours since your loan officer pulled a credit report, just call them and have a conversation, see what's going on. But like trying to get the leaders to follow through with that 10 or 20 minute per day task, it's like pulling teeth. And you know, they've got, again, they have their saboteurs. They have fear around like, well, what if I call the loan officer and they tell me they're quitting? Or what if I call the loan officer and they take offense to it? Or what if I'm being a nag? Like my mom used to be a nag towards me. And it's like, what, all those stories, you got to get those out of your freaking head, because the best way that you can lead mortgage people is by helping them stay on track with productivity. Like we do not run a nonprofit. We have a pipeline driven, commission driven business. And I've always been in awe of how Hovik is one of the few managers I've met in this space who has his formula. His formula is pretty freaking simple, and he just follows through with it. Like it's not rocket science to be a good leader if you come up with your rhythm. And Hovik would be the first to admit this. He's not the big gregarious guy who's going to get up on stage and like be the Tony Robbins lead type of people with motivation, but he can lead them with accountability. And I think it's just beautiful that he's found his zone of genius. And I cannot convince, or I frequently cannot convince or coach other leaders to do the same thing. Loan officers will do it because their money depends on it, but that activity is just a little too detached from the revenue of the manager that I can't get them to see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you're talking about Hovik. Hovik, by the way, amazing job. I feel like Hovik has a very strong emotional intelligence, and he is all about connection and relationships.
Yep.
And I think that's his one of his strengths. And so he wants to connect. He genuinely wants to connect with people, because that's the definition of a leader. You want to help people be the best version of themselves. It's not about you, and it's not about the bottom line. Because if you help people become the better version of themselves, they're going to be champion of what you are doing and your purpose and your vision. And they're going to deliver 10x what they want to do, because they know if they help you, they help themselves. If they help themselves, they help the community, they help the organization, and off you go. Right. But then if you get stuck into this metric and numbers, like how many sales, how many leads, how many this, it's so like mathematic, and it's so separated that it separates that human connections from people. And then those people start to connect their worth to how many leads they got or how many like sales they have made. And then it's like, oh, then I'm not worthy. Then I'm really bad at my job. I'm really good. I'm going to get fired. And then they start again, their saboteurs will take over, their judge will take over, and then their productivity will flatten. But if you have a supporter on the other side that will call and check on you and still give you accountability. So there's still like that fire of accountability. I want things to get done, but also, hey, what can I do to be there to support you? If you're going through stuff, like, let me know and I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the genuine, what Hovik is doing. That's when people are like, oh my God, I can be me. He's not micromanaging me. He's not checking on his bottom line. He's genuinely checking on me and how am I doing? And I think that's when people like miss that, right? Like with salespeople, there are still people. And one of the best examples that I've seen, it was with Mind Valley. So Mind Valley, when they hire people, the first thing they do is they take them on this trip. And I think they hike like to the top of this mountain. And they basically tell them, hey, let's create your ideal vision of the future. What do you want in the next 4 years, for like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And they create that. And then while they're creating that, on their way back to the mountain, they ask them, so do you think Mind Valley is the place for you to be, right? So they already help you get that clarity and get that purpose to keep going, right? We've seen it also with Organifi in San Diego. Like they were literally every morning, like they were on Mondays, they had a table like where they had like the dreams of people, their personal dreams, and also like their goals for sales. Like, I want to go to Timbuktu. I want to buy a house. Like you could literally see their personal goals, but also see their business goals. And so that's why I'm saying that the two needs to be harmonized and not like be completely separated. Yeah. And then when people get only stuck on one side, they miss this whole emotional side. And let's be honest, since COVID, like our emotional intelligence, our connection, our sense of belonging, like crashed.
Yeah.
Big time. big time. People don't even know how to connect anymore. Everybody is becoming an introvert. Nobody wants to meet with anybody. Everybody just want to stay far away. And so that's the job of these leaders, these future leaders. It's like, no, I'm going to show up for them and I'm going to show up for me, because when I show up and I help them, I also help myself. And that's
that connection piece really spoke to me, because right before we got on this interview, I was talking to one of my coaching clients whose name is also Scott. Great guy, great loan officer. And he's in a little bit of a funk, as our mini loan officer, because interest rates are high and transaction volume is low. And I'm like, hey man, just out of curiosity, is there an office by you where you could go work? Because I just know for like 4 years, he has a beautiful ranch with horses and donkeys and chickens and all kinds of stuff to do. And same thing, he can jump out and just jump in the pool. But other than his CrossFit community where he does his morning workouts, he hasn't seen anybody except for his wife and his mother-in-law in like 4 years. And I'm like, dude, even if it's like going to a coffee shop just to be in the interaction of other human beings, or find a real estate office and call them and just say, hey, look, here's the deal. I don't want to be your in-house lender. I'm not trying to steal any business. I don't even know if I'm going to work with any of the realtors in your office. I just want a place where there's other human beings. Could I come in once a week and just work out of your conference room, or rent an office for like 1 day a week? Because like, we're humans. We need a tribe. We need human interaction. And I think there's a lot of mental health problems masquerading as business problems because of the environment that we all put ourselves in post-COVID, which I just think is really dangerous. I think in 100 years, when they do the post-op review on 2022 to 2030, there's going to be a lot of problems that showed up that were really just mental health problems in disguise, because we we alienated ourselves and we kind of like quarantined ourselves from human interaction. And there's no way that that's good for us. Like, humans are social creatures.
100%. But then like that fear that got instilled during those times is still percolating somewhere. And the fact that we were isolating ourselves for a year, almost to 2 years, it's like we rewired our brain. And now like going out is really hard. Like, you have to force yourself to go out. You have to force yourself to dress up and go and meet people outside of your own family and things. And so it's back to like, have to relearn all over again, like what social connection is. And that's why now I'm seeing a huge rise in communities. And I'm thinking like, this is like the new business model that is like growing really, really fast. And I'm helping a lot of people create their own communities right now too, like as leaders. So one, it gives them the authority, but it also create this sense of belonging and this sense of community with people, because people wants to be with other people, but they also want to be with people that are like them. Like, we learned through exchange, like psychological safety, and how is that important. And so the first two questions you ask yourself, am I safe here? Can I say anything I want? Do I belong here? Right. So it's all about going back and like finding that tribe that will accept you as you are. And you don't have to be someone else and something different, and also feel safe being who you are with them. Right. And so that's what I'm seeing too, like this big surge now in businesses or companies, or even entrepreneurs, like starting their own communities. And it's just because of that need. And it's so key. And, like I've been doing emotional intelligence and training on communications and things like way before COVID. And even that, I'll give it like C+, like when I was like giving workshops to people. So now for sure we are like a D- to an F, almost like a lot of things.
You mean as a society, we're at like a D- as far as like societal relationships and community and stuff like that, and mental health?
Yeah, and like conversations, because I'm hearing a lot of horror stories, like where people will come to me, it's like, this is what my manager said, this is what my leader said to me, and or like how they are treated and things like that, right? And I'm like, well, they need to have a really leadership training, because this is not the way to go. And so like it's always back to with emotional intelligence, what I tell people, and it for me, like I think it's the same thing with leadership. It is not taught, it's caught. So when you show up and you embody your own leadership, and other people see you embodying it, like your friend, like Hovik, like is doing, then other people will start emulating it, right? But then you were trying to go and trying to teach it to other people, but they don't understand it, they don't see it, and also they don't have that capacity for connection, right? or they just need to relearn it or see other people how they are doing it. And so because we are human creatures, it's so key. That's why like it's so important to have models, right? And be like, oh, this person models to me what true leadership is, like their presence, their self-responsibility, the way they take action and bold actions, the way their presence is, like the way they show up, like, and really try and identify like these key principles or trait that you really appreciate in someone. And I'll be like, how I can emulate that for myself, or what does that look like for me, my own version of that. Because one of the key things I always tell people, I'm like, if you see something you truly love and appreciate in someone else, you already have it in you. Because if you didn't, you won't even be able to see it. I see the strength you see in others. You already have them within yourself. Maybe you haven't nurtured them yet. Maybe they're still hidden under so many layers of what the COVID, that what happened for a lot of people, all like your self-limiting beliefs, your saboteurs and all of that. And so for me, like as a strategic coach or leadership coach, I really help people uncover all of that. I just remove all the layers so we can get really to that true core essence of who they truly are and what their true essence is, right?
Man, you're like a quotable machine today. First of all, when you said leadership is not taught, it's caught. I love that. We're going to like bookmark that and make that a reel, because that's really good stuff. Like leadership is not taught, it's caught. I love that. Hey, this quick interruption is brought to you by me, Scott Groves, the host of the On the Edge podcast. This podcast is brought to you by me. I'm a loan officer who can help you with a mortgage in all 50 states across the United States. I also coach loan officers. So if you are a home buyer who's looking to get a mortgage, if you're a realtor who's looking to partner with an awesome loan officer, or if you're a loan officer looking for coaching, get in touch with me. It's those sources of revenue that allow us to produce this podcast and get out a new episode to you every week for the last couple of years. So if you're looking for a mortgage, if you're looking for a mortgage lender to partner with, or you're looking for a mortgage coach, I'm your guy. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. And then when you see a trait in somebody else that you admire, it's because you see that in yourself. And as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking, I'm like, oh, where does this show up in my life? And the last 4 years I've been on this journey to like learn jujitsu, and I hate being bad at things. So I want to get good at jujitsu. And what's interesting is the people I look up to, Coach Casey, Mike Lady, Tom Lawler, they might be like physically stronger than me, but we've got more or less the same body build. We're about the same size, the same weight. And it's like, oh, I can see the moves that they're doing in myself because we're the same, physical apparatus. Some super tall, 6'4", lanky, 160-pound man who can do all this weird stuff and bend themselves. It's like I was taking private coaching lessons from this guy, Jordan. Love him. He's a rock star. He's awesome, black belt at jiu-jitsu, but our bodies aren't the same, man. Like he's like Gumby and made out of a rubber band. So I'm like, I don't really see in me the traits that he has that make him great at jiu-jitsu. So I can learn something from him for sure, but I'm not trying to like emulate his style. But when I see, Coach Casey, who's like another 50-year-old dude with some busted up knees, I'm like, oh, the fact that he can still get on the mat and dominate, I'm super like intrigued by that and appreciative of that, because I can see that in my own skill set and body type and age and whatnot. Like he's got a 20-year head start on me, but I don't know, maybe I can catch up. So that's really interesting that like what we admire about other people, somewhere in our subconscious, we see that in ourselves.
It's already there. Maybe you don't see it. And so that's why you need help in covering it. And so just having this awareness that what I appreciate and like in someone, I already have it in me. Like that strength is already in me. Like, and really connecting that with yourself that yes, if I see it, that means I have it, right? That like bring it. Like same thing when somebody says a word, it may not trigger you at all. Just like comes here, goes yet on me, like, oh my God, like, and then I'll have like a energy and like get angry or get happy, like whatever. And so that's an emotional trigger that will happen. And so that means that person is triggered by a certain word. And same thing, you will see a strength in someone that you will appreciate more than anything else, but it's indirectly, it's because you already have it in you. And that's why I tell my client too, in terms of jealousy. Jealousy is not a bad emotion, really, because jealousy is just an emotion that shows you that that's what you really, really, really want for yourself. So it just gives you clarity into something you truly wanted, but you just didn't realize. And then you're like, oh, they have it. And then you just need to ask yourself, I'll be next, right? But now, thank you. because now that I had this emotion coming into me, I just realized that that's what I really wanted for me, right? So now you go and you add it to your goal setting or your vision, whatever you want to create for yourself. And so our body will always give us a lot of clues and a lot of insights. And that's why we've been always like led from our head, right? It's like head walking, like everybody neck up is like, that's how we do our business. We do everything. And then for me, like with fire and flow leadership or with feminine leadership, because for me, when I talk about feminine leadership, I talk about self leadership. It's like connecting within, right? Where like there's after the masculine leadership, it's like going out, right? I'm going to go do the sales, go do the lead. I'm going to create the purpose, where like everything within feminine is like, or flow is everything within. And so within myself, like what are the messages that I'm getting? Trusting your intuition. Are you listening to your intuition when you make business decisions and you do things? And like it's same as like when you want to have a meeting with someone and somebody comes into the room, the moment it comes to them, like, nope, there's no way I'm going to work with this person. And you have no idea why. Versus other people's like, oh my God, I think we're going to do amazing things together. And you have that person didn't even say a word. You don't even know them. And so that's kind of like little snippets of your intuition talking to you, because there's so much happening inside of you that you don't even realize. Like your core values are there all the time. So when you say someone's like, they're never in hell I'm going to work with that person, without realizing it, in that moment, your values clashes. Your values are clashing. Versus you'll meet someone like, oh my God, I feel like home with this person. Yeah, I feel great. There's an alignment there. There's something there that can be built on.
You know, right? I'm thinking about how we met, right? Because we met, and I remember the setup. I remember the lobby we were sitting in after one of the exchange events. It was previously Leaf. There was you and two other ladies and me, and we were all talking about like getting in touch with masculine energy versus feminine energy, and how does Scott need to be a little bit more feminine? And then we were talking about your price point, and I was like, I can remember this conversation so distinctly. I have no clue who the two other ladies at the table were. Because like for whatever reason, like we just weren't in alignment. I probably wasn't going to work with them. I probably wasn't going to be long-term friends with them. I wasn't going to have them on the podcast one day, but there was something about, and you and I are very different people, but there was something about our energy, our core values where I'm like, oh, this is the conversation I want to lean into. And it's crazy that I can remember our conversation exactly. I was like, no, double your prices. You're so worth it. And we had this long conversation. I have no clue who the other two ladies at the table were. And I'm sure they're lovely ladies, but I can't even recall what they looked like or who they were or any conversation I had with them. But I remember exactly what we talked about. And I remember the advice that you gave me. So that's pretty wild how that happens, right?
Totally. Yeah. And see, like, so that's exactly like one of the signs, right? Like when you will remember so vividly a moment, a clear moment with that person, like there is definitely a clear alignment. And that meant also that this person will be in your life for a while, right? Like, and so, yeah, so it's so beautiful. And so, yeah, so that's when I talk about inner game and when I talk about growing the leader, because there's so many capacities that are already inside of you that you don't even realize. Right. And then also like trusting, like the big element of trust. And so that's why, like, even in business, yes, we're calling and cold calling, whatever things that people need to do to get to the bottom line. But there's also this element of intuition, right? There's also this element, like, I remember, like, I will be like, I really want to talk to this person. And I'll be like, just like, I will email and then nothing happens or they don't reply or whatever. And I remember one day I was just sitting, whatever, in my living room doing whatever. And I'm like, I feel like calling that person right now. And I called and they answered. And they're like, oh my God, I was literally going away on a vacation and literally I just grabbed my phone. You called. I was so happy you called. And I'm like, yeah, I followed my intuition in that split second moment. I remember also one day I went to this meeting and there was like the CEO that really wanted to work with me. And his investor was just belittling me literally in the meeting. And I was just like, staying my ground and we're like, yeah, thank you. And I'm just like, but I knew at that moment, there's no way I'm going to work with this company. Right. And then I remember leaving and it was like in a hot summer like day. And I went to a coffee shop and I got myself a hot chocolate and I didn't know why. And I was sitting and then my partner at that moment, like she called me and she's like, so how did it go? And I'm like, you know what? Like we can definitely do everything they want, but I didn't feel it with the other person, so I'm not even interested. And she's like, let's triple our rates. And at that moment I was like, yeah, maybe you know what? No. Like literally, like my body just said no. And I didn't realize why. And then when I was thinking about it, I'm like, wow, because I had to go get a hot chocolate on a hot summer day, I needed like kind of an internal hug because I was literally like insulted about that guy, right?
Right.
And indirectly, right? All the little things that they're gonna say, like especially I look younger than my age and whatever. But I can see the CEO was like, I really want to work with you. Like I can feel it. Where the other guy was like, whatever. And so I just told her no. And I was like, and then I can feel like kind of sense of relief, right? Because I listened to my intuition in that moment. But like getting hot cocoa, it was like automatic. I was not even thinking. It just know what my body needed in that moment. But I had the awareness to be able to recognize what was happening and then have that inner conversation and be like, oh, okay. And then, yeah, and then I sent them an email, like, I'm not going to work. And then the investor guy was like really shocked. It's like, what? I'm sure you're going to work. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good. Right. But so it's those little signs too that we need to start trusting when we are doing business, right? And then really trusting that intuition, trusting that all the elements that you have within yourself and trusting that connection. Because for me, when I do my leadership series, so I work a lot with organizations across Canada, and I started doing some with the US, which I'm super excited about, where like I will always talk about like the three layers, right? So there's that first layer, like which is the self leadership, like leadership with yourself, like leading yourself. And then after that, it's like leading others. And then after that, like how you can like lead with all the resources that are available to you, right? And how you can like all align everything together. So it's like with the layering, the core always stays the same. The core always stays with you and your own personal leadership and how you show up, because your energy introduces you before you even say a word. We already know that. Your values, and if you're clear about your values, then you will only be attracting the right people to work with. A lot of people that I meet, a lot of leaders that I meet, they don't even have their personal values. They don't even know them. They cannot even name them. So that alone, like it's a big exercise. A lot of the leaders don't even know their essence. They don't know what their essence is. A lot of leaders don't know their genius zone. They have no idea. They have no clue, right? And so there's all of these different elements that for me are so critical. Like if you don't know yourself, like how can you play this game?
I want to ask about that because I know that you advertise that you work primarily with women, but I also know you've worked with a lot of men in all kinds of capacities, going back to your marketing agency and now with what you're doing. When you think about this Fire or Flow, the name of your program, and you talked about the feminine energy and the masculine energy, and that doesn't mean man or woman, because like every man has some feminine energy to them and every woman has some masculine energy. When you're coaching, do you find it easier to get women in touch with their masculine energy, and we'll just say doing the cold calling and the structure stuff and the strategy and the check the box and the more like gregarious, outgoing, masculine stuff, like stuff that's normally associated with masculine traits? Or is it easier to get men in touch with like their more feminine side and being a little bit more maternal and loving and caring and whatnot? And maybe they're both hard. I don't know. But can you talk a little bit about that, of like trying to get women more empowered to like lean in? Yeah, fuck yeah, I should double my rates. I'm worth every penny, right? Or is it easier to get men to be like, hey, I got to be a little bit more calm and nurturing in this situation and show some more feminine characteristics? Like, how does that show up? Which one's harder? Which one's easier? I'd love to hear about that because I think you're uniquely qualified to talk about this topic.
Yeah. Well, I will start with my own experience and with my own story, right? Like I was born in Morocco, and then in that moment, during that time, I know now a lot of things have changed. Like, yeah, you're a woman, you have nothing to bring to the table. Like you're going to get married, you're going to be a really good cook, and that's about it. Like, I rebelled against that. I was the top at my school. I was able to get a scholarship to go to Canada. I was able to do my master's degree. I went and I started my marketing agency, and I kept going. And then when my marketing agency had the highest year ever, I was like sitting in my living room during Christmas with 4 or 5 infections at once. I couldn't smell, I couldn't taste, I couldn't speak, I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, you like ran yourself into the ground, right?
Yeah, totally. And I just heard this big scream, it's enough. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? Like, I just like, what is this? Right. And it was like my intuition, my body saying it's enough. Like something has to change right now. And I was like, what? Like the best year ever. Like clients are happy. My team members are happy. Everything is good. There's a lot of money in the bank. Like everything I wanted to create, like I wanted to do, I did. And then So when that happened, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a year off. And everybody's like, you're crazy. And I was like, I'm gonna go and discover myself. I made enough profit for me, like to not work for the next 2-3 years if I choose to. So you know what? If I don't do it now, I would never do it. And when I went into that self inner discovery and I was working with like 2 to 3 different coaches and spiritual coaches and stuff, I realized that I didn't know who I was. I was just in go, 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 go mode, go, 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 create, create, create. And then the more we were like breaking up the layers, and then I had to slow down. That was the hardest thing. We're really good at just getting busy and have a very, very busy calendar all the time. But the moment I had to slow down, I had to fit it all. I was not ready to fit it all. Nobody's ready to fit it all. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to fit it all. It was hard. I felt it all. It was not easy. And then went through all those layers, I realized that my essence was feminine, but I've led my whole life from a masculine energy. That was basically a shield that I was wearing to protect myself. And so what I realized in that moment was that the fact that I was able to get to this level of success with my business and everything, it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with me trying to prove to myself and proving to my culture and proving to my dad that I can do it and a woman can do it. So I was climbing a building that was the wrong building. It was not even the building I was supposed to go into.
Yeah, you had
you
had the other problem where you lean too much into the masculine, and you're like, "Whoa, I'm still allowed to be a lady. I don't have to be this ball buster all the time."
Well, but here's the interesting thing. And when I talk women about this, they're like, "I'm feminine," and I'm like, "I'm not talking about you being feminine and looking like a beautiful woman. Like I'm talking about energies, right?"
Yeah.
And so
you're not trying to tell them to get into the kitchen.
No, definitely not. But like they also thought, oh, so you mean like I need to have flowy hair and wear like dresses and stuff? Like, no, that's not what I mean either. Like it's about your traits and things. And so what happens for me and what happens with a lot of my clients, especially women, is that they all have this masculine shield. And so most women has a masculine shield, 100, like 80% of the women I work with have a masculine shield. They are fully on their masculine that they have no idea what their essence is. And so it's exactly the same story as me. And so when I realized that my essence was feminine, I was like, oh, I love to connect. I love to play. I love to this, because I used to work only with CEOs of big, like 5, 10, $15 million companies. So I was always like there, like ready to go and rock. Right. But when I look at my pictures then and then my pictures now, very different. Which one is more authentic? Me today. Not me then. Me then, I was wearing that mask because I wanted to succeed and what society told me to be successful and what success meant to me, what happiness meant to me. And so when I work with women, and especially I worked with few women from Go Abundance, and then same thing, same story. They are very successful, millionaires, making a lot of money and stuff, but they fully in their masculine. And then they come and they see me, they're like, I want to work with you. And then what I realized with that, it was not, they were magnetized because I was exuding my feminine essence in being myself. I can still be fiery. I can still like go get shit done. But my essence, I am honoring my true essence of who I am. And so for a lot of women, they are fully mostly in their masculine and they don't even realize it. And so I'm helping them get into their feminine side.
Yeah.
They don't exude the feminine. They don't trust their intuition. Oh my God. The biggest thing that I've seen, and it just happened with a client last week. I just asked her to go and ask people 3 words that represent her essence and how amazing she is. And she's like, there's no way I can do that. And I'm like, okay, let's delve deeper. Why? She said, I cannot accept compliments. And I'm like, why? And most of women that I've met, they cannot even accept a compliment. They don't know how to receive. Women don't know how to receive. They've been taught to give, but the truth is they are over giving. The masculine give, the women receive, the feminine receive, the masculine is the giver. That we've been taught for women to give. Society told us this is the trait we want you to portray for you to show your worth. Right? Where like the man is like, you need to be the protector in order for you to show your worth. And so I work with a lot of women to help them to allow, to surrender, to trust their intuition, to be intuitive, to be creative, to be vulnerable, to be magnetic, to be authentic, just so they can exude those type of energies. And then with the men, most of them are mostly like in their wounded masculine. They're still in their masculine, but mostly in their wounded masculine, like very competitive and like, I want
Yeah.
to
I got
do
to
it
prove
and I want to do this.
myself. You know,
I have to prove
dad said I
myself.
was never good enough. I didn't hit the home run in high school baseball. Like they're constantly in the
Exactly.
proving stage.
Yeah. And some of them like will be controlling or too competitive or like avoid or unsupportive or whatever reasons, right? And it's like, okay, how I can get you more into your healthy traits, but also like try to connect a little bit to the feminine as well. And the feminine also like have like wounded element, like when you are too victim, right? So when Tina takes over, it's like, whoa, I mean, you're a wounded feminine right now, right? When you feel powerless, when you feel insecure, when you are overly sensitive, overly emotional, things like that. Like when you withhold things from the other person, when you're manipulative, that's been in your wounded feminine. And so there are these four spectrum and we move around them all the time. It's just that most people will be staying in one more than the others. And for me, like it's just about a flow.
Yeah.
So how can you move from one to the other? I can be very masculine and feminine, healthy masculine, feminine with you right now. I can be very focused. I can be very clear in my ways of talking to you, but I could also be very nurturing, very intuitive, very fun and creative when talking to you. So I'm like playing in this between healthy feminine and healthy masculine traits, right? And then after that, like something will happen. I may get an email that will like piss me off or something. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I feel powerless. And now I'm wounded. How can I get myself into my healthy side? And so the idea here is just to learn to move in between the spectrum, depending on the different things that are happening during your day or in different situations or with people. But with women, what I'm seeing a lot, and with men, it's because of the society, patriarchal society, is the spectrum like is already on this side. So everything is tilted on one side. And so now we're slowly trying to bring more of the feminine, like this conversation I started like since 2019. But now people talk about spirituality and about flow and about dance. And now people now think feminine is woo woo. I was like, no, it's not woo. It's still like feminine traits that you have. You just need to connect more to your emotions, to your body, to who you are, to your intuition, to your values. Also, like be clear and purposeful in the way that you work. And so, to be honest with you, I love it when men CEOs come to me or founders and they tell me, I would love to learn to be more in my feminine.
Yeah. I mean, that takes a leap of faith that like, I don't think most men have in them, right? Because you're describing something and you're labeling something that I have seen as a problem in business, politically, and giving the name to it of like, women are under this masculine mask and men are in this wounded masculinity. To me, that describes something that I kind of view as like a societal or a political problem, where it's like, when I think about what's out there, I think society, whatever that means, has done a huge disservice to women by saying, no, like the only way that you can add value to a marriage or to a household is like, how much money do you make? Are you working just as hard as your husband? Are you, it's like, it's almost like we're keeping score, right? Financially and in business and whatnot. And then on the other side, that's the masculine mask, right? That doesn't allow women to be feminine. Like if some woman says, I want to be more in touch with my feminine energy, or I want to be a stay-at-home mom or something, like, I think that should be honored by society, not shunned, right? And then on the male side of it, you have what's kind of this like ultra toxic masculinity. And I hate even using that term because I don't think real masculinity is toxic. But if it's wounded masculinity, where it's like, well, no, I'm gonna treat women as an item instead of a person, and all I'm trying to do is get a bigger car and a bigger house and more flashy money and all the Instagram stuff. Like, I think there's this real societal expression, especially on social media, and you just named it in a way that I couldn't put my finger on, of like, no, it's not really masculine versus feminine, or it's not like right versus left or Republican versus Democrat. It's this masculine mask that society's trying to get women to put on. And it's this wounded version of masculinity that has seen a big rise on YouTube, like the Tates, or I don't know what that guy's name is. Andrew Tate. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, that's not masculine. That's like douchiness. But it's like, it's that wounded masculinity of like, well, I can only prove myself if I've slept with this many women, or I have this kind of car, or I have this type of flashiness on Instagram. And damn, dude, I think it's horrible for men and women. Like, it's not good for any of us.
100%. And yeah, like there's this amazing guy, like there's this amazing podcast called We Are Man Enough. And it really bring in this beautiful conversation. And I really love that one. It's there's a lot of beautiful gems in it. But yeah, but that's the reality. Unfortunately, there is this societal pressure, and that's all we knew, and then we followed with that. But the thing is that things have moved and have shifted a little bit just before COVID, and now like it's even worse. Like literally, when I was at the UN, like at the General Assembly, like the guy said, "Here are the two trends that are coming." Like I was like, I listened to that, I was like, okay, this is it. Is that patriarchy is back in full force. And by 2030, over 300 million women and girls will be in extreme poverty, like if this keeps going. And then the second one is that AI is taking over and it's already discriminating women and girls, right? And so like you hear that and you're like, okay, like we're not done. And then when I was there, like it was so interesting to even hear like some vocabulary I've never heard before, like economic violence against women. Like that was like it shocked you, right? Like it just hit you. And then another word that I heard also, like sexually transmitted debt, right? Like that's when the husband or the boyfriend like take the credit of the woman to buy stuff and do things, and then it leaves her like in like really bad credits and things like that. And so they already start naming things, but they're naming them in words as like wakes you up. It's like, okay, this is a real societal problem, and that it's happening even in North America. It's not happening as deep and as like scary as when you hear about it in other places. And when you are in a place like the UN, you hear from everybody. Mm-hmm. You hear the real stories from everybody. Like there are like some panels I couldn't go to, like sexual mutilations and things like. I'm like, there's no way. If I go there, I will be like in my bed in my hotel for a week, crying and feeling hopeless. So there's so many things there, right? So the place where to start is really awareness. And creating that awareness. And what got me back into like, no, you know what? I'm going to keep going with leadership because this is the way to go. And this is the place. I've been doing this for 5 years and I believe in this. And if somebody still tell me I want a book, I'm like, yeah, here's a book. I'm working on mine. I'll be like, go buy mine, right? By the end of the year, hopefully. But then when I was there, most countries in Europe, leadership is the number one thing they are putting in their agendas.
Yeah. Well,
they are there already.
Look at the state of my country. The two front runners for president, we're gonna have a debate here pretty soon in America of which one of our presidential candidates is more narcissistic, more of a criminal, and has more Alzheimer's. It's like talk about the lesser of two evils. You know, that's always a joke in politics. But at this point in my country, it's like, all right, we have a narcissistic criminal versus a guy that has probably late stage Alzheimer's and can't, walk on or off a stage. I'm like, these are the two leaders I get to pick from. And as much as I like to lambast them, it's like, well, societies get the leaders that we deserve because this is what we're putting up as an electorate. And it's, oh God, it's embarrassing, man. But I want to come back to you before we go off too much on a political tangent. The thing that I like about your program, the Fire and Flow, is that you and I have spent in a small fortune, like the GDP of some countries, on personal development, coaching, books that we've read, seminars we've gone to, mastermind groups that we've been part of. And I think there's a danger with all of those things of to get too much either into the fire or the flow, right? Like there's some of this stuff where it's like, well, we're just going to be all in flow and meditate and it's going to be kumbaya and that will solve all of your problems. It's like, well, yeah, that might help the inner work, but you still got to do the work. Like the phone you still have to pick up the phone and make the sales calls, right? On the other side of the coin, you and I have both been to things where it's like, they're only focusing on the fire of like, make the calls. Here's the checklist. Here's the sheet. Here's the spreadsheet. Here's the, accountability. It's like, okay, well, none of that matters if I'm not in the mindset or I don't have the space emotionally or intellectually to pick up the phone and make the calls. You can give me all the tactics you want. If my mind's not right, I'm screwed. So, we've both paid a lot of money to be at programs where they only focused on one of the two. So talk a little bit about how you designed your program of the Fire and Flow. Like it's a yes and. Like, yes, you have to be in the right mind space. And eventually, Scott, you got to pick up the phone and make some sales calls. Oh, and by the way, Scott, if you're picking up the phone to make the sales calls, you've got to be in the right headspace to actually connect with these people, use a little bit more of your nurturing feminine energy so that they know you care, so that they'll work with you. So talk a little bit about how you design kind of like your trademark program.
Yeah, of course. Well, the universe was created with yin yang energy, right? So there is no light without dark. There is no like day without night, and there's no like evil without like love and things like that. And so with me, with my own experience, where I realized that, whoa, it was like a big wake up call. Like, what? Like, my essence is feminine, but my whole life I was here. And when I look back at my life, it's like I did a full circle, right? I'm back to who I was. Since I was a kid, I would like be writing in the walls, and I'm like, you're like
Yeah,
a
you like
teacher.
for those that are listening tonight, watching, like all of your motif behind you is mermaids and like very like a Tiffany blue Buddha. Like it's very feminine. But 5 years ago, you were like, here's my program, $9,000 to build a website. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if you're gonna do that, you're doing a lot, man. Just double your prices.
Yeah, totally. But see but that's the thing, right? And so like the essence of you, it's like also like I was talking about this inner game, like accepting who you are, like knowing that you are worthy, knowing that you are enough the way that you are, knowing that you are unique the way that you are. You don't need to change yourself or compare yourself to other people's and things like that. And so I needed to do full circle to get back to that, right? Because society told me like, this is what success looks like. And then I was trying to hit that. And then when I hit that, my body literally fought me. And then on the other side, I went and I discovered that my essence is feminine. And so how the name Fire and Flow came about is I was like doing this personal branding exercise with somebody and few people. And the exercise was like, ask different people. And then I did like a lot of like the quantum leap mastermind and things like that. And then when I was there, like I remember I was with this millionaires man, and they were like, I've never been accountable since you became the captain of this pod. And it's nothing that you do. It's just the way you show up. There's no way I'm going to show up next week and tell you I didn't do it. Right. And so there's this fire in you, with you, like this, like part of your essence. And it's true. I have this like fire, wood energy in me, whatever, like when I was talking to spiritual people.
Yeah. People don't like to let you down. Like I'm not going to show up around you and be lazy. It's just not possible.
Right. And I am doing nothing. I am just being me, right? So it's part of my essence. And then when I start like being myself, people will be like, oh my God, you're so funny. I'm like, me? Funny? What? Oh my God, you're so sensual when you dance. Oh my God, like I love how you dress. And so there was this other side of like flow, right? Oh my God, you're so flowy and you're this and that. And you can flow into any conversation. And so it was interesting. And then the woman said, you are fire and flow. You are both. You have this beautiful duality within yourself. And I'm like, well, if I have it, it's like yin and yang, then everybody else has it. So I just think people are just like 5 years before me or 2 years before me, because I was fully in just one side of the thing. And so that's and then when I had Maestra, so my marketing agency is called Maestra, and I will tell people it's about creating harmony in your business, right? In all like aspects of your business. And then I create Fire and Flow, and I'm like, oh my God, it's about harmony. So then I realized that my word for my life, my purpose is harmony. I'm all about creating harmony. And then when I started like working then with women, then I realized, oh my God, they're mostly in their masculine. I need to bring them like onto this other spectrum of the side of the feminine. And then when I was working with men, I'm like, oh my God, they are asking me how I can be more emotionally intelligent, how I can like connect mostly with my team, and how can I be more intuitive in my decisions and things like that. And so when I was like thinking about this program, I was like, okay, it's an inner game. It starts with self. It's all about self. You invested so much money. I invested so much money in developing me, knowing who I am, learning who I am. That's when the self-awareness comes. And when you have that self-awareness, then you can hear the tactic. But if your self-awareness is not there, you won't hit it, right? And then one of my favorite quotes from Jean Rohn is like, your level of worth, it will be your level of income. So your worthiness equals your income. And so if your income is low, that means you don't consider yourself worthy enough, right? Or you're not enough. And so at the end of the day, it's still an inner game. And so the way I designed it is like creating this harmony between the two, but really making a full focus first on the self, on the leader, grow the leader. Because there's no way I can grow a business if I cannot grow the leader, because every level of your life will demand a different version of you. And you have to grow with that. That's when I talked at the beginning about increasing your capacity. So what I do with a lot of women is increase your capacity to receive anything, receive a compliment, receive an abundance, receive a free coffee, somebody asks you, hey, do you want tea? Don't say no. I don't want to bother them, because that's the first thing it's like, yes, of course, thank you. Like, just learn just to receive, like going back to basics, basically, right? And really helping them through like the different modules, like really helping them like recognize some element of healthy masculine, some element of healthy feminine, without me mentioning what those are, because they're not ready. I'm just like giving something concrete, right? And then after that, I put the bow into like really describing the spectrums. And when they get that sheet, like I have like a freebie, like a document, like energy chart that people can download from my website, like they can literally see it. Like they print it and they put it on, like, okay, I get it. I get it now. I'm mostly here. I need to be here, or I need to be there. And so some of the modules for that is what I already mentioned before, in terms of like knowing your essence, your true essence of who you truly are. Like, what is your authentic leadership? Because I do want people to lead authentically from who they are. And
Right.
I also want them to follow their own rhythm. There are like people that will wake up at 6 a.m., make 10 calls, then they're done for the day. Then they're going to go to the pool for the rest of the day. There are people that in the morning, they need just to be relaxed and do nothing and start working mostly in the afternoon, right? So recognizing like when they are most productive, depending on their body type, depending on who they are, depending on their rhythm and things like that. And so really creating, building the lifestyle first, and then getting the business to really match that, and not like doing it the other way around. Boundaries, recognizing their own boundaries, how they can set their own boundaries with themselves, with others. Like that could be boundaries of energy, boundaries about procrastination and taking actions, like really like doing different things. And after that, there's this element of like, okay, now let's talk about strategy. Let's talk about the way you communicate. How do you manage conflict? How you deal with conflict? How you can still like have this executive presence about yourself, and then really show up powerfully as you, as your authentic yourself. You're not putting a mask. You're not playing a role. It's just you, right? And not letting anything shatters your foundation, because a lot of people will build on things and then something will happen and then everything will get shattered, and they'll be like, who am I? And then they need confirmation, they need validations from other people.
Yeah, or they need a drink, or they need a smoke, or they need some coping mechanism, which is not healthy.
Totally. And you know what I tell my clients when that happens? I tell them the way you celebrate and the way you cope should be different. If it's the same, there's a problem. You're not going to tell me I'm going to have a drink to celebrate, and then I need to have a drink because I want to cope with like this like bad news I just received.
Wow.
So you need to have different things, right? So your brain can understand what's happening.
That's wild.
Right?
You know, I've got a lot of friends who are sober, you know, a year, 8 years, 28 years. And it's funny because I bet you if they were listening to this conversation, they'll be like, yeah, when I was an addict, I would celebrate and I would cope with the same tool, whether that's drugs, alcohol, workaholic, sex, whatever it is. It's like, if that's a really good way to put it. If you're coping and you're celebrating with the same thing, that's super dangerous.
It is. Yeah. Because you're not like sending different signals, right?
So close us out with this thought. Like, I want to give people something concrete to maybe end the interview here. If somebody's like, first of all, what's your website again?
I am asmaa.com.
Okay, spell that for the people that maybe aren't on YouTube right now. They're listening.
IAMASAA.com.
Perfect. So Asmaa, and we'll make sure that that's in all the show notes and whatnot. But give us, if there's somebody listening to this who's like, man, I need a tool to get more in touch with my feminine, or there's somebody that's like, I need a tool to get more in touch with my masculine. Just give us a little quick tip or tactic. And obviously there's a lot of headspace. There's a lot of inner work to be done here. But if there was kind of like a simple tool that, okay, I could bring this into my life or my daily practice, give us one for like helping somebody pull more of that feminine energy out of themselves, and maybe one to like pull more of that masculine energy out of themselves.
Yeah. Perfect. Have you heard of the tool, the Power List?
No.
Of John Ez. So the Power List is basically identifying 5 things you want to do for the day, and then they become non-negotiable. And then once you hit those, then you win the day. And then if you don't hit one of them, you lose the day. So that's like the masculine version of like.
Yeah, that's like, so I've got my list of all my like power projects. I got my big rocks. I got to move up the hill. If I do these 5 things, I won the day no matter what other BS happens.
No matter what. Exactly. So what I did is I took that beautiful concept, because it works really well and works really well for men, and I changed it into the king list or the queen list. right? So because I want to create the future kings and queens of this world, because we need different type of leaders. And so the premises is the same. You identify 5 non-negotiable things that you do. The only difference is following this conversation that you've heard today during this podcast. If you felt that you were more in your masculine, then make sure that you own minimum 3 of the items are feminine. And if you feel like you're more in your feminine, then make sure 3 of the items there on your masculine, that you're still going to have 5. So 5 will be like, I need to send 3 emails to different leads for the day. I need to finalize the copy for my website. So those will be like fire. Flow element will be like, I will wake up, I will meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. I will go into nature and go for a walk in nature. I will go and dance to 2 or 3 songs. I will go on a date night with my wife, or I will take my kids into a play date, like anything that are about connection and things. And those, like when you identify a couple of elements that can bring more of that feminine energy into your life, walking close to water, taking a shower, taking a bath, that's like also like being like in your feminine energy. I also tell clients, like, just have this little pleasure alarms. So on your phone, every like 3 hours, put like a little note, like an alarm. And that alarm could be like, I'm going to eat a chocolate and I'm going to just savor that chocolate, really enjoy it. I am going to plan a date night with myself. I'm going to do something. What something brings you simple pleasure in your life, put that into your day. That could be like something also feminine that you could do, right? Like writing or journaling about your emotions, starting to label your emotions or how you are feeling. Like stop again, instead of a pleasure alarm, it will be like a check-in alarm, and it'll be like, how am I feeling right now? What would be a word I can use? So those are feminine element, like just giving you few examples to help with that. And so when you have that list of 5 things, that become your non-negotiable. And I can promise you, when I do that with my clients, like a lot of things shifts for them. For a lot of women, they're like, oh, I feel more feminine now.
So if I'm more in my masculine energy, maybe 3 of my 5 would be something like, take a strategic break, just go walk around the block, enjoy an iced tea, right? Maybe listen to a meditation podcast or a prayer podcast or something. Quality time with my kids, quality time with myself, quality time with my wife, some self-care stuff, some relationship building stuff. Like I need to get more in touch. So 3 of my 5 items, if I'm trying to pull out more of the masculine or more of the feminine energy, will be in that self-care, relational calmness. And then if I'm more in my feminine energy, 3 of those items might be more structure, right? Like write down your calendar and make sure you don't have any conflicts. Make 10 sales calls, more outbound. I would call it the strategies and the tackling, the blocking and the tackling, the strategy and the tactics, that kind of stuff. So if you're trying to get more in your masculine energy, maybe 3 of those 5 are like strategies, tactics, like learn something new. And if I'm trying to get more in touch with my feminine side, it's going to be more relational, self-care, meditation, pausing, like taking a little bit more inventory of what the hell is going on in my head.
Yeah. And you can also see it from doing, which is masculine. I'm doing something versus being. I'm just being. There is no agenda. There is no plan. There is nothing. Like, I love when, like, I look at my calendars, like before, it will always be busy. And I'm sure yours is also like, there's a lot of blocks of things to do. Since being in my feminine, I add sacred white space in my calendar that doesn't involve anything. It's just like, I'll have a block of 3 hours. And then in that moment, I'll be like, oh, what I feel like doing right now. Oh, I feel like writing. I'm going to write. Oh, I feel like creating this, or I feel like, and then I just allow my intuition to guide me in that moment and just to flow. Because we want to create that flow. We know when we are in a flow state, we get more things done, right? And you have to slow down to speed up, right? Because sometimes again, like I mentioned to you earlier, I was like going higher, but in the wrong building. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop to be like recalibrate. And we know with a plane, if it's like one little like a little bit like not in the right direction, like it will completely go off course really far away.
Yeah.
And so that self check-in is very, very important. And so when you create this king list or this queen list with those 5 non-negotiables, it could be like something that you could do every day. So that becomes part of your habit. Or it could be like, I need to launch my website in the next 2 weeks. Okay, so today, like I'll be working on the about page, or tomorrow I'll be working again on the about page. And then that way until it's done. And then you can change it. I'm reading a book, or I'm finishing an audiobook, or anything like that, right? But those become things that allows you to embody your leadership. And that's what this whole purpose of Fire and Flow leadership is about embodiment. It's not about just learning the thing. It's about embodying it. Because like I said, leadership is not taught. And so anything that you do in the confine of your home that nobody sees, I can promise you, the moment you're going to step out of the house, you're going to walk, you're going to go to a meeting, you're going to talk to people, you're going to go on stage, people can really feel the shift in your energy and how you are like presenting yourself with all the work you're doing, like behind closed doors.
I love it. I could talk about this stuff for hours, but we got to have you back on the podcast when next time you're in LA or Vegas, so we can have you on in person, because we got to hang out and do this in person. But I always like to end on a couple questions for you personally, whether it's personal, professional, travel, whatever. This will come out summer of 2024. We're a couple months ahead of on our schedule. What are you most looking forward to personally, professionally, just something in your life? And then what's your favorite movie and why? Because I'm a movie junkie, so I feel like I can always learn things about people from their favorite movie and why. So what are you personally looking most forward to in the second half of 2024? And then what's your favorite movie and why? And we'll end on those two.
Beautiful. Oh, I love these questions. Okay, so the first one what I'm looking up to is definitely finishing my book, Fire and Flow Leadership. I've been working on it for the past 2 years. I teach it, but I haven't written it. So I would love like to publish it. So that way it's out there. So that's a big one for me. And I also started my own community as well. So I'm excited about these two projects. And my favorite movie, that's really good. Well, I guess my favorite movie is the movie I try to watch once a year. So that will be Under the Tuscan Sun.
I've never seen it. Tell us about it and tell us why it's your favorite movie.
Oh, it's such a beautiful movie about, first of all, breathtaking landscape of Italy and Tuscany. So we love that. But it's really a narrative about transformation and finding yourself, which you can see there's a theme here.
There's a theme, yes.
It's about personal growth. It's about resilience. It's about the search for happiness. It's about like believing that you all can always rebuild and find joy in your life, even if there is like a lot of adversity. And Diane Lane is doing an amazing, incredible job, like representing like the woman who really lived this, like that after a divorce that she had to completely like rediscover who she is and what her life is all about and about that. So yeah, so it's about independence and courage, and it's inspiring and it's empowering. And I just love that movie. It's just beautiful. So.
Well, I love it. I love you to death. I hope that you find your way down here south of the border here pretty soon so we can hang out.
Let's do it.
And as soon as the book comes out, please let me know so I can promote it. We can have you back on the podcast to talk about, further the concepts of like your Fire and Flow leadership in your class. We'll make sure we put the website, Instagram, all that stuff so people that can find you. And thanks for being on, buddy.
My pleasure. So nice to talk to you, Scott.
Talk soon.